Yo, what's good, what's good? Shalom, shalom. What's up, what's up? Yeah, I know y'all see the title. World War III Countdown. World War III, The Watch. Because we still, the total topic is World War III, The Watch, the Countdown to the Apocalypse. I know we haven't covered this in a little while, but we still keeping our eyes open on the events that's going on in the world. And, even though the news probably, died down on certain things that's happening, but, we still keeping our eyes open because all these things that's happening is what we call prophecy being fulfilled, right? So, you know what I'm saying? And lately, it's been the Israel and Iran getting into it, right? They throwing missiles at each other and all that cool stuff. You know what I'm saying? The Iron Dome that they have protecting Israel, which is their missile defense system, is called the Iron Dome. It allowed 100 and something rockets from Iran or something, drones or something came over and blew some stuff up or what have you, right? So you know how the news is trying to make it seem like that the Iranians is just on some, on some rogue stuff, but we remember, sometime back here that the Israeli government killed some Iranian generals, right? That's a big deal. So they're not gonna let that slide. So we're watching things unfold, and we're kind of somewhat focusing on the Iran aspect of it because that's a big part of prophecy because that's gonna bring in other nations, right? And we're gonna read through these prophecies and get the understanding on how we can correlate these things to what we see in the Bible, right? So, and a lot of people don't understand that this is how God get down, you know what I'm saying? And we're going to get into all of that too, right? Because some people see all the stuff that's going on over there, the war and the shit, the shit that's happening. And they be like, well, basically, the attitude is like, okay, God is not down with all this, right? But we're going to see what the Bible say, right? Because everything that happens is for his purpose, right? And so we're going to get into that, right? So without further ado, of course, all praises to the Most High Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, who the world calls Jesus Christ, right? That is all praises to the Most High God and His Son's name, Yahweh Shai, right? So just real quick, right, we're going to try to just rapid fire through these verses real quick, try not to take up too much time, right? So we're going to start with, I'm going to start off with Joel 3, right? Start off with Joel 3. I'm going to start at verse 2, right? We're going to read a little bit. So, this is the prophet Joel, chapter 3, verse 2. And it says, I will gather all the nations and will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Now, where is that valley of Jehoshaphat? Well, number one, the word that word in the Hebrew means valley of decisions. And that is like in northern Israel, right? The valley of Jehoshaphat, right? So he says he's going to gather all the nations and bring them down. So we see this thing that's going on in the Middle East with Israel and Hamas and now Iran. We see how things are ramping up over there. So then when we read it in the prophet Joel, it says, I will gather all nations and I will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. We already established that it's northern Israel. We can find that on the map. And I will plead with them for my people, for my heritage, Israel, which is, we all know, the so-called Black, Hispanic, Native American people. Not those people over there with the little curly stuff hanging from the side of their head and the little saucers sitting on top of their heads, right? Not them. So it says, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So, who been scattered throughout among the nations? We have. And we learn about that through the transatlantic slave trade, the Arab slave trade. We've been scattered throughout these nations, right? The so-called people with the little curly stuff hanging from the side and a little saucer sitting on top of their head, they didn't go, they wasn't scattered through warfare or slavery or conquest. Every country that they end up going to, they went there willingly, right? And when they went there, they prospered there also, right? So it can't be them. So it says, and they had cast lots for my people and given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine. Let's get into slavery. When the Europeans came down, they was trading, with the Africans for wine, guns, weapons, and they were selling us off to the Europeans. So it says, and they had cast lots for my people and have given a boy for a harlot and sold a girl for wine that they might drink, right? So they've been, like I said, when you get into the whole slave trade and the certain things that they were trading, with the Africans for, it's this right here that we read it, for wine, other little goods and stuff like that, right? Then it says, and what have ye have to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon? Those are African nations. So God is saying these African groups that took part into selling the Israelites into slavery, because if you don't know by now, we're not flesh and blood Africans. Yes, Israel is on the continent of Africa, it's Northeast Africa, but we're not ethnically Africans. We will be considered Israelites, because Africans are Hamitic and Israelites are Shemitic, right? So we're not the same. Just because we're the same complexion doesn't make us the same. It's a lot of East Indians that have dark skin, but they're not called black or nothing like that. They're known as East Indians. So just because you have the same complexion, how they say all skin folks ain't kin folks, right? So, for those that not, know how to understand it. So then it says, what have ye to do with me, Tyre and Zidon, and who have cast the coast of Palestine? I will render me a recompense, and if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, I will return your recompense on your own head. So God is telling these African nations that sold us into the Europeans and said, what you think you did something to get at me, because you took my people, you put them into slavery, sold them to the Europeans. He was like, so you think you got one up on me? So basically saying like when it's time for payback, it's nothing you can do about it once I decide to actually pay y'all a visit, right? So it says, and read it again, because this is the old English, right? So it says, and ye what I have, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, in the coast of Palestine? Will ye render me a recompense? Meaning, are you going to pay me? Like, if I decide to move on you, what you going to do to try to get back at me? What type, if I decide to do something to you, you can't do nothing to me because I'm God, right? Then it says, ye render me a recompense, and if ye render me, if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense on your head? So God said, even if you do try to come against me and my people, I'm going to come down on you so hard, it's going to, like I said, it's going to be too fast, right? You know how they say you can't box with God, right? And it says, because ye have taken my silver and my gold and carry into your temples goodly pleasant things. And that's what happened. When you go into the history, they robbed us. They took all our stuff. They took our gold. They took our wealth, right? And they put it in, in their little Vaticans and their Buckingham Palace and all their other little places that they like to congregate, and their museums and stuff like that, right? Then it says, the children of Judah, the children also of Judah. Hold on, where I'm at. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold to the Grecians. So who's the Grecians? The Grecians are what we call so-called white people. So it's telling you, it's giving you the history of us, that slave trade thing. It's giving you the prophecy of that of what happened to us during the slave trade. And it says, where am I at? Boom, boom, boom. It says, behold, boom, 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 boom. Let me go back up. It says, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold into the Grecians, that ye might remove them far away from their borders. That's what happened to us, right? We scatter all over the world, right? Then it says, behold, I will raise them out of the place where ye have sold them, and I will return your recompense upon your own head. That's what's happening now. A lot of our people are waking up to who we are, we being the biblical Israelites, right? We're waking up to that fact, right? And that's part of prophecy as well. So it says, I will sell your sons and daughters into the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for the Lord hath spoken it, right? That's called justice, right? A lot of people, we think about the history of slavery, and a lot of our people are like, well, I don't want to do that to nobody. That's, two wrongs don't make it right. But God just said here in this prophecy, in that day, he's going to take these people that took us captive, give them to us. Then he's going to have us sell them to the Sabians, whoever those people are. It says, to a far off nation, right? Then it says, now this is the point. This is why we came here. I have to give the whole background to why we here. Then it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. The Gentiles are the other nations outside of the Israelites. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. This is what we're seeing right now. These countries are preparing war, right? You know what I'm saying? Lines is being drawn, and sides is being picked, right? You know what I'm saying? People is taking sides, and the line is being drawn. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up, right? So God is putting the spirit on these nations to get ready for battle, right? All these other nations is strengthening up their military. Even these weaker nations, it's like, you know what? We about to go for broke. We about to, get our weight up, and we about to throw our hat in the ring too, right? So everybody is gearing up for war. That's what a World War III is, where all these different nations is fighting everybody, right? Then it says, prepare a war, wake up the mighty man. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your prune hooks into spears. What does that mean? That means take your manufacturing companies that's just making typical goods, change them into making war weapons, airplanes, bullets, grenades, whatever the army needs. Take some of your factories and start creating these weapons. That's what it means by beat your plowshares into swords and your prune hooks into spears, right? So, and I used to work for at a manufacturing company. They had a government contract where they was making gaskets for airplanes, right? And so, yeah, a lot of these manufacturing companies got these government contracts where they're making parts, for the armed forces, right? Then it says, let the weak say, I am strong, right? And that's what's happening with these other countries, especially those African countries that's joining up with the BRIC. They're becoming strong now, because now they can share into, the wealth of the BRICS, because, they're together, just like the nations of NATO. When something going down, America or whoever, they can send weapons to this country or that country to strengthen them up. So that's what it means by let the weak say I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come ye heathen, and gather yourselves together around about hither, cause thy mighty ones come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be awakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. That's the valley of decisions. That's what it means. Then it says, for there I will sit to judge all the heathens around about. Right? And that's what it's coming down to. God is gathering all these nations to come into the valley of Jehoshaphat, get into Israel. You know, it's pulling America into it. It's pulling Russia and everybody into it, because check it out. Iran is part of the BRICS, right? So just like how with the Russia and Ukraine thing, Iran was sending drones to them, you know, helping them out. Of course, Russia is going to turn the favor and help Iran out, until they have to actually put boots on the ground, right? America is trying to, you know, do their best to help the Israeli people out, but then they're going to have to put boots on the ground, because it's prophecy. That's what's going to happen, right? So, and a lot of people don't understand, you know, this is how God get down. God, you know, he's like, hold on, let me get this real quick. Let's go to Exodus real quick. Let's get Exodus 15, right? Because we got to understand the God that we serve, because we don't understand this. Exodus 15 and 2. It says, the Lord is my strength and song. He is become my salvation. Because that's what he is to the Israelites, our salvation. And he is my guide, and I will prepare him unto the habitations. Meaning, you know, we're going to set apart, you know, portions of our lives, our, you know, our day-to-day things, just to thank God, focus on God, remember God, right? That's what it means by where it says, prepare him a habit. He is my God, and I will prepare him a habitation. Meaning, you have a spot for God, right? Nobody fill up those churches more than our people do, because we have that zeal for God, even though we might not have that according to, you know, knowledge, but we have that zeal for God, right? And it says, my Father God and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. That's the point. The Lord is a man of war. Yahweh is his name. So God is a man of war. That's why he got this stuff going down, because this is how he gets down, right? Let's get our dear brother Daniel real quick to further prove this. This is how God toppled kingdoms. This is how God take down nations, right? Because he is a man of war. Let's get Daniel 4 and 17 real quick. And it says, Daniel 4 and 17, it says, this matter is by the decree of the watchers in the demand by the word of the holy ones, to attend that the living may know that the Most High rule in kingdoms of men. So God is in control of everything, whether you consider it good or bad. He controls everything. It says, the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of man, and give it to whomever he will, and set up over the basis of men, right? So that's God. God rules in the kingdom of man. God will raise a nation up to be great, then take them down with another nation. He'll raise a person to be great, then take them down with another person. That's how God gets down, because it says, Exodus 15, he is a man of war, and Yahweh is his name. That's his name in Hebrew, Yahweh, right? So let's get into it though, right? So I just wanted to bring that out real quick to give a understanding that when we see these things happening, understand how God operates, because he's a man of war, right? And so let's go to Ezekiel real quick, because we got to understand this. Boom. Because, you know, I'll be seeing people posting stuff about church and all that stuff, but I never see the post, or I never see a pastor that's actually breaking down what's happening and how close we are to World War III. I mean, we technically in the beginning stages of World War III. I mean, it's what they call proxy wars, or what they might call a cold war. A hot war is when they got actual boots on the ground and people running around with guns shooting everybody. That's a hot war. So this is a cold war, but it's going to heat up because the Bible says so, right? So this is Ezekiel 38, right? Let's start at 1. So it says, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog in the land of Magog. Now, Gog is a way of saying king or prince of Russia, right? Because Magog is an ancient name for Moscow, right? Which is the capital of Russia. So it says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog in the land of Magog, and the chief priests of Meshach and Tubal, right? Those are those old Soviet Union countries that was all connected to the USSR back in the day, right? And it says, and say, thus saith the Lord, behold, I am against thee, O God, chief priests of Meshach and Tubal. So God is against the Russians, right? And he's against America, right? But he's still going to use the Russians, the BRICS, to take down America. Because like how we explained with the first couple verses we read, that God is a man of war. He rules in the kingdom of man. He will raise up a nation, then destroy that nation with another nation, right? And that's how it goes, right? So it says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thy armies and horses and men of clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, right? So God is, is talking about, this is talking about the brick, right? All these different armies coming together, right? Spearheaded by Russia, right? Then it says, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. So this is the brick. Persia, if you know, you know. It's an ancient word for Iran. They just changed their name to Iran in, like, I want to say the 70s. I think, we can fact check it, the 70s or the 80s. But I know if you're young, if you're around my age, you remember those commercials back in the day when we was kids, when they were selling Persian rugs, right? That was coming from Iran, right? So, but they changed their name into Iran in, like, I think at least the 60s or the 70s, maybe as late as the 80s, but definitely not past the 80s, though. I know that much. So, but for a long time, they were known as Persia, right? And it's saying Ethiopia. We know that the Ethiopians is rolling with, the Ethiopians and the Somalians is rolling with Russia. When the Ukraine war first kicked off, they were begging to send their troops to help the Russians, right? Libya, right? We know they rolling with them. Libya with them, and all of them shields and helmets. Gomer is that's getting back up to the like Turkey area, because you gotta understand, even though Turkey is a part of NATO, but they are a Islamic state. They are a Islamic country. So, and we see that Turkey have some beefs on what's going on in this current Israel and Hamas thing going on, right? So, and when you read in Revelation and Obadiah and all that stuff, it tells you that, the members of NATO, they're going to end up, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them going to end up turning on America, right? And we looking at it, we know that Turkey is going to be one of them. France is going to be one of them, right? That's the ones that I can, there's a few other countries I can't think of right now. But, a lot of these different countries is going to understand that they're in a losing fight on the side of America, then they're going to jump to the BRICS, right? And Revelation tells you how that ends, right? So where we at? Boom, boom, boom. So it says Gomer and all of his bands in the house of Togarmah in the north quarters, and all his bands, many people with thee. So this is God is talking to prophetically speaking to the Russians, and it says prepare, be prepared and prepare for thyself. So God is telling Russia, get your stuff together, right? Because it's about to go down. Get all your people together, all that, right? And it says all your allies, right? And it says be thou prepared and prepare for thyself and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be a guard. This is the point that I want to get to. Be a guard to them. So this, when we think about Iran and Israel, or Iran and America, this is why I say this could potentially blow up into something bigger, because God is charging Russia to be a guard to the Iranians. And we know that they're in the BRICS, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China. But, now it's called the BRICS Plus. So it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa Plus. All those, because they just admitted, a whole bunch of countries into the BRICS squad this year, right? And with more coming next year, filling out applications to join into the BRIC, right? So God is telling Russia to be a guard to these people, right? So that means, and we know that means, when Iran, just like how Iran, spoke earlier about how Iran was sending drones to Russia with their Ukraine thing, Russia gonna have to turn a favor and help the Iranians, fight against Israel and America. Then that's gonna ramp things up, right? So that's what it means by be a guard to them. Protect these people. You know what I'm saying? Don't let no harm come to these Iranian people. Don't let no harm come to the ancient Persians, right? So it says, be thou prepared and prepare thyself, thou and thy company as a symbol unto thee, and be a guard to them, right? Because Russia, they got like I said, they got good military tactics, so they can be a guard to these other nations, right? That's under the BRICS, the weaker nations under the BRICS, right? So it's like I said, so it's interesting when you get into the prophecies and stuff, and you see how things are shaping up over there in the Middle East, right? So let's get our dear brother Zechariah real quick. Go to Zechariah. Zechariah, you can start at 18, 1 and 18, right? So we got to understand everything about this and why this is happening. Why is God is trying to, how we spoke about how he used different nations to take down other nations, right? So, let's get this real quick. And I'm going to pull up this one real quick. Hold on 1 second, bear with me. Boom, boom, boom. Alright, so let me read it right here. So it's Zechariah 1 and 18. It says, Then lifted I up my eyes and saw, and behold, 4 horns. So who's these 4 horns, right? And it says, these 4 horns is America, Britain, Spain, and Portugal, right? Those were the ones that, had a good, those are the ones that was like the 4 main characters in the transatlantic slave trade, right? So it says, and we're going to prove that. And it says, then lifted up, then lifted up, then read it right. Then I lifted up my eyes and behold, 4 horns. And I said unto the angel that talked with me, what are these? And he answered me, these are the 4 horns that scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. So this is how we know this is talking about the British, the Americans, the Spanish, and the Portuguese, because they scattered the children of Israel through the transatlantic slave trade, right? And, and that's history, right? So then it says, and the Lord showed me four carpenters. Now you have four carpenters. So you have four horns, and then you have something called the four carpenters, right? The four carpenters would be the brick. You know what I'm saying? Gucci Man and brics wide, right? The brics. The real Pusheisty. Vladimir Putin, right? And it says, and he showed me four carpenters. Then said I, what come these to do? And he spake, saying, these are the four horns which scattered Judah. And you know how we got scattered through the transatlantic slave trade, right? That scattered Judah, then, 70 AD, all that stuff, right? And it says, so that no man lifted up his head. What that mean is, once they established dominion over us through slavery, and, sure, we had some revolts and all that stuff, but collectively, they was able to dominate us, right? All the way up into the recent times, the 60s, the Jim Crow laws, the lynchings, all that stuff, right? The laws that they passed here in America, they still able to dominate. So, and then they killed all of our leaders. So we, that's why it says, we don't lift up our head, because now we don't have that fight in us no more. Now we don't have that fearless mentality, because whenever we see a Martin Luther King, a Malcolm X, or Huey Newton, or whoever you want to think about step up, we see how they get destroyed. So it says, so that no man did lift up his head, but these are come to fray them, right? So now I'm just talking about the carpenters, right? It says, come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, and which lift up their horn over the land of Judah, to scatter them. So God said, just how, when we get into the history, just how God used the Babylonians to take us down the first time, and then he used the Persians to take them down. Then after a while, he used the Greeks to take the Persians down. Then he used the Romans to take down the Greeks. That's how God get down. Because we read earlier that God is a man of war. We read in Daniel that he rules in the kingdom of men, right? He's the orchestra of everything. He's the director of this whole thing. He's the Spike Lee of this movie, right? So everything that happens is under his watch and his okay, right? So it says, boom, 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 it says, but these come to fray them and cast the horns of the Gentiles, which lift up their horn over the land of Judah, to scatter them, right? So these people, so it's saying that these carpenters that he brought forth, which would be the brics, is going to make war with the four horns. And this is why, it sounds like sometimes you might see me do these lessons and it sounds like I'm cheering for Russia or whatever. That's because I understand prophecy. Of course, I'm not cheering for Russia. But I understand that the destruction of this place is a direct tie and correlation to our true salvation and liberation out of this place. Because it says, but these are come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horns over the land of Judah, to scatter it. And that's what they did, especially with the Bedford Declarations, when they brought them people in the land and they started dividing up the land and say, okay, you Arab niggas, y'all take this. You European niggas, y'all take this. You other people, y'all take that, right? They started dividing up the land, right? Just get Daniel. So okay, we got to understand this, right? So this is Daniel chapter 2, verse 40. It says, the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for much as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdue all things. And as iron that breaketh all these, shall it be broken in pieces and bruised. So this is talking about the Roman Empire, because America now is the revised Roman Empire, right? Then it says, And whereas thou saw the feet and the toes, so now this is talking about because this is when you get into this chapter, it's talking about the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw, and Daniel ended up interpreting the dream and breaking down the significance of that statue that he saw in his dream, and we know that statue represents different empires throughout that was going to come into power after the Babylonians, because the Babylonians was the first. That's why the statue was the head of gold. Then as you work your way down, you get to lesser metals, and how things start to decay as far as like how their rulership is, right? So then now we get down to the 10 toes, which would be the American Empire, NATO, the EU, right? And it says boom, boom, boom. It says, and whereas thou saw the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay and part iron, the kingdom shall be divided. And that's what America is. That's what a lot of those Western European countries is. They're divided because they're divided on policy. They're divided amongst the people because you have something called racism. They're divided on sexual orientation, everything is all about division. They preach like it's like some type of utopia where everybody's just getting along. It's just this big old melting pot of people, but we're divided, right? Segregated through ideologies, philosophies, or whatever, right? Divided. And it says, whereas thou saw the feet and the toes, part of the potter's clay and part iron, and the kingdom shall be divided. And that's what happens too, because I was speaking earlier about how Turkey is part of NATO, but Turkey is an Islamic country, and they rolling with Hamas in them, but they supposed to be a part of NATO, right? You have, I think Hungary or something like that. They're a part of NATO, but they're still buying oil from Russia, right? That's just like if you and your peoples, y'all beefing with somebody, but then one of your guys is still, buying work from the people that you beefing with. You're gonna be looking at them like crazy, like, dude, this is the people, this is our op. You know what I'm saying? We trying to kill these niggas, right? Why are you funding them by buying, but that's what we have within within NATO. That's why it says, the kingdom shall be divided, but shall be in the strength of the iron. That's talking about their military. Because, come on, you got NATO, the EU, all those countries put together. That's a mighty military, right? But that's why it takes something like the brick to rival that, right? So now you have Brazil, Russia, and China, then all their little underlings that's under those four nations. It takes another big empire to rival this empire that we know as America, right? So it says, but there shall be in of the strength of iron, for much as thou sawest iron mixed with clay and myrrh, right? So basically saying, like, even though they're divided on their policies and how they think certain things should run, but concerning the military, they're pretty strong, right? Because nobody wants, because they have that chapter, Article 7, I believe, where if one country get into it, we all get into it. So that's, like I said, so it goes back to the whole Iran and America thing, and then that's going to bring America into a bunch. That's why we read earlier in Joel about how God is bringing all these nations into northern Israel, which is called the Valley of Jehoshaphat, and then he's going to destroy them all there, right? So we see all of these, the makings of these things, right? This is how we know that the Bible is true, because especially with us living in 2024, we can read these prophecies and see how things have played out and been playing out, and then we can put two and two together and say, hey, this is something here, right? It's something right here. Even though Pastor don't do a horrible job explaining this book, but when we read this with the right spirit and sense, we can see what's happening, right? So it says, It says, and as for the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. So we understand that. This is why, you know, you had something a few years ago called the Brexit, where Britain was trying to leave out of the European Union, and I think a few other countries want to get out of the European Union, and then you have other, like I said, you have other issues that's going on within NATO, right? Even here in America, you have some, the two major parties in America is Democratic and Republican, and they don't never see eye to eye. They're divided. And how this democracy system is set up, you have to vote on things. So this is why things don't never really get done, because they don't see eye to eye on how they think the country should be running. So that's that division that Daniel was talking about, right? So it says, and as the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom should be partly strong and partly broken, right? And it says, and as for thou sawest the iron mixed with myrrh and clay, shall they mingle themselves with the seed of men. So this is talking about the melting pot, how everybody, all nationalities is all together, and they try to push this, we are the world type spirit, but it's been a horrible disaster for America and their allies, right? Because we see the history, we see how things go, we see the racism, the divisions that, we see throughout the world, right? And it says, whereas thou sawest the iron mixed with myrrh and clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, because, like I said, I bet you it's a lot of biracial families out there that will admit that, one side of the family don't really get along with the other side of the family, right? And so we know that these things, where it says that mingle themselves with the seed of man, but they should not cleave to one another, even as iron is mixed with clay. So we have this division here, right? And this division from the people all the way up to the government, right? Division. And that was prophesied through the prophet Daniel, right? So let's get let's go to Revelation 18 real quick. Revelation 18 and what I want. Let's get verse 8. Wait, do I want verse 8? Yeah, we get verse 8. So it says, therefore her plague shall come in one day. This is Revelation 18, verse 8. Therefore her plague shall come in one day. It's talking about America, right? Because America been dipping their nose in everybody's business throughout the whole world, right? They're over in the Middle East. They're over in Africa. They're over in, everywhere. In the South Pacific. Everywhere, right? Causing havoc. And it says, therefore her plague shall come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burnt with fire. Right? That's what's coming to America when this war, when this World War III thoroughly kicks off. Because America has a debt to pay, right? And we know civilizations typically last for about 250 years before they, get toppled some type of way, right? And America is way past that time, right? The expiration date is been expired, right? So it says, therefore her plague shall come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burnt with fire. So this is talking about when these nations come against her, right? And even some of the allies that's rolling with America when they come against her. And it says, and the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. So once those nuclear bombs hit America and destroy this country, these countries that is, still allied to America, I'm guessing maybe, England and all that stuff, they're gonna be very sad, and it's gonna be a horrible sight to see, because this place that was once flourishing and the place to be in the world, everybody want to come to America, it's gonna be nothing but ashes and smoke when it's all said and done, right? And we hoping that we get up out of here. That's the whole point of this, right? Because the Bible says that we only have a chance to escape this thing. And that is, when I mean by we, I'm talking about the Israelites, right? And so let's get let's go to Isaiah real quick. Isaiah 14 real quick. Let's start at verse 8. Isaiah 14 and 8. It says, yes, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, since thou have laid down no feller to come up against us. So this is, the prophet Isaiah speaking prophetically, concerning America, because America think that they can't be touched. A lot of these people, you talk to these, American people, they so prideful on, on this country, like America has the best army in the world, all this stuff, right? A study came out, right, several months ago, and I even put this on Facebook, not too long ago. I believe, let me get it right. 70% of the armed forces today is overweight. So 70% of America's military is out of shape, right? Then when it comes to recruiting people into the army, it says like over 60-something%, or it could be close to 70, are not even recruitable to the army because of drugs, obesity, overweight, all this stuff. Because you have a whole generation of young people that like to pop pills, and, a lot of them are addicted to these opioids, right? You can't put them in the army, right? So America is done for it. Anybody that believes that America got a chance, is just have sorry to say, but foolish pride, right? Because the Pentagon itself is telling you that they kind of messed up. Like 70% of their existing army is overweight, and then if they want to recruit people or bring people into the army, they can't even do that because like 60% of them is not even qualified to enter into the army because of drug use, obesity, and other little elements that's going on, right? It's crazy, right? So that's the truth of the matter. So this is Isaiah. Let's read it again. So it says, yes, the fir tree rejoiced at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou hast laid down, no fellow that came up against us. So you have a portion of this country that really believes that America is untouchable. So that's just what this is talking about, saying no fella had came up against us, meaning ain't nobody, since we did what we did to Japan in World War II, nobody really want to smoke with us, right? America was feeling like Nardo Wick, who want to smoke with us, right? But after they dropped that bomb, right? And it says, hell from beneath is moved for thee, and to meet thee at thy coming. So hell in this concept is talking about death, right? So it says, death from beneath is moved from thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stir up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It has raised up from their throne and all the kings of the nations, right? All they that spake and say unto thee, art thou become weak as we, right? So that's where a lot of these other nations, when America finally gets destroyed, or when America start going through their little turmoil, because it's going to happen, right? Because, like I said, we almost there. What I mean by we almost there, we almost at the end of this whole shebang, right? There's a few more prophecies that have to take place. The mark of the beast, famine, civil unrest, all that stuff, right? And we see all those things in play now, because you have something called the Neuralink. The little microchip that they trying to put in your hand and in your head, right? So we have the technology. So the technology is here already for the microchip. For the something called the mark of the beast to take place. The conditions is already here for the famine and stuff to take place, because you have energy going up, food prices going up, inflation, all that stuff is happening. Then once war kicks off, when war really, really kicks off, when I mean by war, I'm talking about as far as America is concerned, everything else is going to skyrocket, because we didn't live through, and a lot of our parents was fortunate enough to be born after 1948, right? So our parents didn't live through it, and we didn't live through wartime. What I mean by wartime, I mean like World War III time. Because, like I said, I said this many times, you do the history on the conditions of America during World War II, a lot of people were struggling, right? Because a lot of the resources that would typically go to the nation have to be allocated to the army to keep them fed and keep them healthy, so they can continue on fighting. Because what people don't understand, it ain't about what type of guns you got. War is about nutrition. What I mean by nutrition is, are you able to, carry on fighting? Do you have the logistics, to keep supplies and all that stuff? So that's what I mean by nutrition. Logistics, how prepared you are, different, oil, all that stuff come into play. And it's not about how many people you kill. It's about, are you able to continue fighting, right? Because that's why Hitler lost. Hitler lost because he started running out of money in oil. Then they had to start trying to come up with ways to make synthetic oil, right? So that was the main reason why Hitler lost, because he ended up thinning his army out, because he started trying to fight all these multiple fronts at once. And then he was running out of oil to supply his army vehicles, right? So war is about nutrition. It's about who can outlast the other person. It's not necessarily all about who can kill the most people. That's why there's a phrase called, you might have won the battle, but you have not won the war, right? So it's about nutrition. So, where I'm at, boom, 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 boom. Let's get, Isaiah 66. Well, hold on, didn't I finish that? Hold on. Let me make sure I finish that real quick. Boom, boom, boom. Isaiah 14. 8. Okay, yeah, I finished that. Okay, yeah, Isaiah 66 real quick. Isaiah 66 and 24. So Isaiah 66 and 24. So it says, and they shall go forth and look upon the carcass of the men that have transgressed against me. Talking about the armies of the world. That's, it says, and they shall go forth and look upon the carcass of the men that have transgressed against me, for their worm shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be a horror to all flesh. So what that means is, when America is finally destroyed, all these nations are going to look at America like just shake their head like, wow, I can't believe they try to do that. And then they got dealt with severely. And the people is going to hate America for that. They're going to hate them. And because they're going to see that the cause, the illness that's in this world it all happened on their watch, right? once they came into power, we read that in we can read that in Maccabees. It talk about once they came into power, evil multiplied on the earth, right? So it says, and they shall go forth and look upon the carcass of men that have transgressed against me, for their worms shall not die, neither shall their fire be quenched, and they shall be a whoring of all flesh. Meaning, people, this is going to be like, once this place is destroyed, this is going to be a story that you tell to your kids to scare them. Like, look, don't be like how these people were, because God came and dealt with them, right? It's going to be a story that that people share amongst each other, and it's going to be like, wow, they're going to look at these people like, wow, I can't believe they tried it. They tried it. It didn't work out too well. So they're going to be a lesson to the rest of the world to don't go against God and his people, right? That's what this is talking about. Let's get Daniel real quick. Daniel 7 and 18. It says that this is Daniel 7 and 18. It says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess it, the kingdom forever and ever, right? Because that's what's going to happen. Just like when you read about Joshua, right? When Joshua went into the promised land, we took the kingdom, right? So, and that's what's going to happen. We're going to take the kingdom. That's why I always use the metaphor, like, when you think about World War III, Armageddon, this, imagine the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania mixed together. So the Royal Rumble will be what we call World War III, where everybody's fighting everybody. To see who's going to be the next top country, right? The next top empire. But then you have WrestleMania, the main event. That's what we call Armageddon. That's when Yahweh comes back, who the world ignorantly, mistakenly called Jesus Christ. He's come back. And then these nations are going to be stupid enough to want to go to war with the God, with Yahweh and his people, the Israelites, right? That's why, if I try to tell people, especially on air, do not let your children go into these people's army, because if they in the army long enough, and when this stuff happens, they're going to have to, if they call themselves a so-called Christian or a believer, they're going to have to end up fighting against their Lord and Savior, because that's what's going to happen. That's what the Bible says, that these nations is going to come together to try to subdue the man who they call Jesus Christ, right? Because they're going to be looking at him as some type of alien invasion when they see this stuff happen, right? So, like I said, if you got children, please tell them to be doctors or something else. Don't let them go into the white man's army and fight their battles, right? Because God is going to destroy this place, right? So it says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever and forever. So we're going to take the kingdom, and it's going to be ours forever, ever, right? And that's what people got to realize. Let's we'll go to Jeremiah real quick. So like I said, we speeding through this. It's not, I wanted this to be an in-depth, lesson breakdown, but I'm just going through these prophecies real quick, right? So, like I said, to give a brief understanding of what we're seeing, going on, right? And to see that the fact that Iran and is starting to have a bigger role into what's going on, because they was already supplying Hamas with weapons, but now they actually using their weapons on Israel too. So like I said, that can blow this thing up, right? Because like we read in Ezekiel 38, God told whoever is the leader of Russia, he put a spirit on them to be a protector of the Iranian people. So when they get into some stuff, they're going to be right there to have their back, right? So let's get Jeremiah 51 and 19, right? We'll start at 19. And boom, boom, boom. So it says, the portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. So God is only concerned about the Israelites. We are his rod of his inheritance. We are his people, right? And this is all happening for the liberation of us. So when you see all this crazy stuff happening in the world, you got earthquakes in various places, floods, tornadoes, war, famine. This is God fighting for us. This is God fighting against those nations on what they did to us. Because God tells you in the Bible that he would not meet them like a man. And what that means is, like, when he fight them, he not fighting them head up. He not, he's coming with everything he got when he's fighting against these people. He's not going to fight them fair and square. That's what it means by when God said he's not going to meet them like a man, right? And we see these things. So it says, start over. It says, the portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. The Lord of hosts is his name, Yahweh of, right? And it says, let's get this real quick before we get to the next verse. Because we got to understand this. Let's get Deuteronomy 4 and 22 real quick. And it says, but I will die in this land. I must not go. Hold on, boom, boom, boom. Start at 19, my bad. Deuteronomy 4 and 19. Lest thou lift up thy eyes unto heaven, and thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, and even the hosts of heaven. Right? So what does that mean? That means if we start to look at, a lot of our people went crazy a couple of weeks ago when a damn eclipse happened, and everybody just act like eclipse never happened before. Like, this is not a regular occurrence, right? People just lost their mind last week or a couple of weeks ago when it happened, right? Eclipse have been happening since the sun been the sun and the moon been the moon, right? So they always been happening. But you have a certain section of people that look at these signs in heaven, look at these stars, and they start creating ideologies off of them, start creating religions off of them, start creating whole type of doctrines off these things, right? But God says, unless thou lift up thy eyes unto heaven, and thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars and the hosts of heaven. What is the host of heaven? The host of heaven is these other spiritual beings, these other gods, that govern these other nations. Because that's what people don't understand. Everybody reads this Bible and they think that God is the God of the whole world. But no, God put other gods above other nations. That's why when you go into the history of things, every country had their own God, right? So it says, let me see, right here, boom. It says, boom, boom, boom. Even the hosts of heaven should be driven to worship them and serve them. So we shouldn't be worshiping other gods from other cultures or people, because a lot of our people like to get into Hinduism, Buddhism, I guess they do that too for alternative of Christianity. Okay, but that's still not our culture. You're practicing the Indian culture, right? The East Indian culture. And whenever you practicing someone else's religion, you always going to be a second-class citizen to that group of people, right? And it says, boom, 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 and serve them which the Lord have divided unto all the nations under the whole heaven. So God gave those things to those people to worship. It's okay for those people over there to want to, like the Egyptians. It's okay for the Egyptians to look at the sun and want to worship the sun and call the sun Ra. It's okay for them to do that, but it's not okay for us, right? It's okay for China to, have Buddha and all them people. It's okay, but it's not okay for us, because that's, it's okay for the Greeks to have Zeus and all those people, the Romans to have Jupiter and Mars and stuff that they follow, Thor. But God didn't give those deities to us. God said that He's going to be our deity that we need to worship and follow. And we prove it right here. Ecclesiasticus 17:17. For the division of the nations of the whole earth, He set rulers over every people. Those rulers is talking about powers, gods, principalities. Like how you read in, what's that, Paul, when he talk about we battle not against flesh and blood, but rulers and powers and, what I'm talking about. Right? So this is what we're reading here. It says, for the division of the nation of the whole earth, He set rulers over every people. But Israel, but who? But Israel. But what? Israel is the Lord's portion, right? So we belong to God. So all those other nations, it's cool if they want to worship whoever they want to worship. But as an Israelite, as a Black, Hispanic, and Native American people, we are supposed to worship the Most High God, Yahweh, and His Son, Yahweh Shai, who the world calls Jesus, as our King, right? That's what we got, right? That's who our power is, right? So I just wanted to show y'all that. So let's get back to Jeremiah 51, and let's go to 20. Thou art my, this is talking about the Israelites. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war, right? So this is who, when God, we read about this in Ezra's. Like I said, we're not going to get super deep into it. But it says, thou art my battle axe and my weapons of war. With thee I will break in pieces the nations, and with thee I will destroy kingdoms, right? And it says, and with thee I will break in pieces the horses and his riders. So it's talking about the horses and his riders will be modern day tanks, right? They're little modern day tanks, and they're, and their other military vehicles, right? And it says, so that's why we read earlier about how it says the saints would take the kingdom. And I'm showing you how the saints is going to take the kingdom. Because it says that thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. And with thee I will break in pieces the nations. And with thee I will destroy kingdoms. And with thee I will break in pieces the horse and his rider. And with thee I will break in pieces the chariots of his rider. Right? Talking about He's going to use us to destroy these militaries. That's what's going to happen in the Valley of Jehoshaphat when we get to Armageddon. Because remember, I used the analogy of this being like, if to put it simpler, like how if you follow wrestling, this would be like World War III is like the Royal Rumble. Then as World War III is happening, then when Christ comes back, then World War III is going to splinter off into what we know as Armageddon, right? And that's what I'm likening to WrestleMania, because it's gonna be, us and Yahweh Shai versus the Russians and whoever they got with them, right? And the rest of the armies of the world. We read about that in Ezekiel 38, 2nd Ezra 13, right? Many places, Revelation. We read about these things, right? But like I said, it's not a in-depth lesson, that I'm just going over, a few things, right? So we, but of course, when we have more time, we'll go a little deeper, and we have went deeper. Pause, right? So we, this is things that we talked about before. So then it says, boom, 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 and with thee also I will break in pieces the man and woman, and with thee I will break in pieces the old and the young, and with thee I will break in pieces the young man and the maid. So God is going to use us to destroy these other people, these other nations. He's going to give us our get back, right? For them doing what they did to us, putting us in this situation, slavery. oppressing us in all these different nations that we're in, right? It's called the get back, right? It's called justice, in case we don't know. Because a lot of our people don't understand what justice truly is, right? That's because America have denied us so long the true, true justice that we don't even have a concept of what real justice is. When you tell a person that this is what God planning on doing, for us, and people be like, oh no, I don't want that. That can't be true. But the Bible tells you that we're going to do these things, right? That's called justice. And we're going to do these things because these things were done to us, right? Then it says, and we can prove that, of course. And it says, boom, boom, boom. Let's get, so let's get Jeremiah, boom, boom, boom. Let's go to Jeremiah 50 real quick. 50 and 22. So it says, so like I said, we got to understand, like, when we see these things, we can't be alarmed and be like, oh man, this is all bad, this is all bad. Excuse me. But we got to understand that this is all prophecy, right? This is prophecy being played out, right? And it says, the sound of battle is in the land of great destruction. How is the hammer of the whole earth is cut to cinder and broken? Who's the hammer of the whole earth? America and NATO. Because they go around the whole world dictating stuff to people, making other countries follow policies that, that's not even, that's not even a concept in their land, but they're making them do certain things, right? And so it says, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become desolate among the nations, right? Because of nuclear fire, that's how it becomes desolate among the nations, right? Because when Russia, Iran, China, Korea, all them people, they push that button, that's how it becomes desolate, right? Then it says, I have laid a snare for thee, right? I have laid a snare for thee. What does that mean? That means God has set a trap for these people, right? That's why when we went into earlier about how in Ezekiel 38 it talks about telling Russia to be a guard to the Iranian people, right? And like I said, it's going to bring all those people into all this stuff is just a great old master plan to get this nation down to the Valley of Jehoshaphat, to everybody there, for God to judge them. That's why it says, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, right? So meaning they're falling for it, right? Joe Biden's keep giving billions and billions of dollars to the Ukrainian niggers, billions to Israel, giving money to Taiwan over there. He's falling for it because after a while that money's going to dry up. Then you're gonna have to put your army over there because your money is not stopping them. So now you got to put the army over there. So he's setting a trap for them. So it says, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou also have taken, O Babylon, thou hast, hold on, let's get it right here. Let's get it right here. In the GNT. See, I'm over here double-breasted, right? Got the GNT over here. So let's get it. Let me read it. Start it again, right? So it says, right here. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, here we go, right here. Let me read it over for y'all. So it says, boom, boom, boom. Where's 20? When that time comes, no sin will be found in Israel, and no wickedness. Hold on, that's the one I'm looking for, right? Okay, 22. My bad. So then it says boom, boom, boom. The noise of battle is heard in the land, and there is a great destruction. Babylon, the hammer of the whole world to pieces. And now the hammer that is shattered, all the nations that were shocked at what has happened to that country. Babylon. Hold on. Move this out real bit. Boom, boom, boom. It says Babylon, you fought against me, and you have been caught in a trap I set for you, even though you did not know it. So this is, how it reads in the G&T. So it's saying, Babylon is, in this context, is speaking of America, because America is that mystery Babylon, right? And it's not talking about, because some people want to be simple and talk about, it's talking about ancient Babylon. But when you do the research on ancient Babylon, Babylon was not destroyed. This is talking about this place being destroyed and uninhabited. There's people living in Babylon right now, right? So it's not talking about them, right? Because when Darius and them took over Babylon, they marched into Babylon, and Nebuchadnezzar just said, "All right, here you go." You know what I'm saying? He didn't even put up a fight, so they was able to take Babylon without destroying Babylon, right? So it's not talking about that. It's talking about the future Babylon, which is America, which is called the daughter of Babylon, right? Just to clear that up. Because some people might want to say, well, this is... No, it's not. Because history doesn't support that. History and let you know. I mean, we can look on TV. We can see that Babylon is what consider ancient Babylon is people living there and is flourishing, right? So it's not talking about that. It's talking about America. It says, Babylon, you have fought against me, and I have been, hold on, let me read it right. Babylon, you have fought against me, and you have been caught in a trap I set for you, even though you did not know it. I have opened a place where my weapons are stored. So this is God talking about how he's going to destroy this place. And where's his weapons stored? In Russia, in Korea, China, India, all these places where, they have nuclear capabilities that can rival America, because Russia got more bombs than America, right? So it says, boom, boom, boom. I have opened the place where my weapons are stored in my anger. I have taken them out because I, the servant Yahweh Almighty, have work to do in Babylon. Attack it from every side. Open the places where the grains is stored. Pile up the loot like piles of grain. Destroy the country. So this is God's decree towards America, to destroy this place by using the BRICS. Why? Russia, Brazil, Russia, India, China, right? So it says, destroy the country, leave nothing at all, kill all their soldiers, slaughter them. The people of Babylon are doomed. The time has come for them to be punished, right? And it says, refugees escape from Babylon and come to Jerusalem, and they will tell how the Lord our God took revenge for what Babylon has done to his temple, right? And his temple is the people, because the people is the church. We are, the people is the church, right? So that's the temple. So we see how this thing is shaping up, right? And we see what's going on with it, right? And God said he's setting a trap for these, simple American niggers. What I mean by that, I'm talking about the government, right? That's why they keep on, when you think about it, it's dumb to keep giving Ukraine people money, right? And at the detriment of your own people. There's so many people here in America that's struggling. They're not talking about no stimulus checks or none of that stuff. They didn't extend the child tax credit or none of that stuff. Some people haven't even got their taxes yet, because it's being held up, for whatever strange reason, right? So he's setting a trap for these people. They're doing all of this stuff, and common sense would say, look, this is dumb. I'm not going to keep giving money to the Ukrainians, or to Israel or Taiwan, because my country, the people are suffering, and the energy prices is being risen. You got inflation, all this stuff going on. So I'm not even in the government, right? And if I can understand that this is dumb to keep giving out billions and billions of dollars to a losing effort, because Russia would have been took Ukraine in like 2 weeks if America wasn't, funding them and sending, equipment and other weapons of warfare over there, right? It would have been over with. So we got to understand this is dumb. So when we read this verse and it's talking about how he's set a trap for them, and and they're basically falling for it. We see how this is, because we know that this is dumb, because anybody in their right mind would not continue to just throw away money at because that's, try to throw money at a problem, basically. A problem that doesn't, that money is not going to fix, right? So, because Russia, like I said, Russia's not going nowhere. And then it's going to get even bigger because Russia is deep with Iran. And so Russia's going to have to move if Iran, move like that. They're trying to make it seem like, okay, well, Iran attacked Israel and Israel attacked them back, but, that's just where it's at right now. No, this stuff is going to escalate, and we've been watching it continuously escalate. It started when, a few years ago when Russia went into Ukraine, and everything that's just been escalating from that conflict on. So now you have China like, well, shit, Russia went into Ukraine because, well, shit, we about to go into Taiwan, because Taiwan belongs to us too. Just like how Russia feel like Ukraine is part of their nation, which they were until politics got involved. China feel like Taiwan is part of our nation too. So we're gonna go in there and get some straightening up, right? And that's what that's what we're seeing here, right? So America's being led down, being walked down, to this thing, right? Blindly. And don't even know that this is all part of the big plan to destroy this place called Babylon, aka America, right? Also known as Sodom and Egypt in the Bible, right? According to Revelation 11, right? So that's where we at with this thing, okay? And so yeah, we're gonna end it there though, cause we'll end it there. Like I said, of course we're gonna get more into this, go deeper into the subject and all that stuff. Like I said, this was just a quick rundown, that of the things that the Bible said was going to happen, and we can see is actually forming and taking place today. So, like I said, I hope this was edifying. But but before we get into that, of course, like I said, we did many videos about this. I covered this subject, a lot, on here. Like, you can go to the videos. This is called World War 3, right? Watch, the Watch or whatever. I forgot how I title it. But I have a bunch of videos about this World War 3 and how what we see today connects to what the Bible says was going to happen, right? So we can all look at that. So, like I said, I hope this was edifying and people, we have a better understanding of what we see and how Iran and all these other countries play into, play into the factor of prophecy and how things is going to unfold. How this is, the fact that Iran is actually, getting active, how this is, is potentially can make this even more bigger, and it is going to make it more bigger because we already know the game plan, because the Bible tells us what was going to happen, right? So, like I said, so we got the script to the movie. What's going on? We know the play. You know what I'm saying? We just have to keep the faith and the patience, you know, and the commandments, so we can make it through this whole thing. You know, and with, like I said, so with that being said, I'm gonna say shalom, peace. Hope this was edifying. I'm out.